Today we're going to talk about frequency tables and other ways of organizing data. And we're going to start with stem and leaf plots. That's something you've probably seen before somewhere uh, in one of your math classes, or maybe even a science class, somewhere where you organize data. For instance, the temperature in degrees Celsius for 2 weeks are given below. Use the data to make a stem and leaf plot. So here we are given all of these temperatures, 7, 32, 34, 31, and so forth, and we want to organize them into a stem and leaf plot. Notice that our temperatures range in value from 7 degrees all the way up to 36 degrees. Now, what happens here is, since these are mostly two-digit numbers, the first digit would be your stem. Now, if you have a single digit, what we're going to do to make up for this is use a 0 for that. So 0, 7 for 7. Then we're going to use the first digit of all of the other numbers for our stems. So we have 0 for our single-digit numbers, 1 to represent the teens, 2 for the 20s, and 3 for the 30s. Now, what we're going to do is actually list these individual numbers next to each one. For instance, 32 can be found here. Now notice I have put our leaves, the second digit, in order. The second digit is called leaves. 34 can be found here with the 4 next to the 3 for 34. 31, the one in the row with the 3 for 31. 26, the 6 would go in the row with the 2's representing the 20s, so 26. 27 right here. 23 here, and so forth. And I think you can follow this. There's only one number in the teens, that's 19, so 9 will go next to the 1. As I said, I put them in order. It's always a nice idea. Usually you start off making your stem and leaf plot, just writing the leaves down, and then you put them in order from smallest to largest. Okay, so there is a stem and leaf plot. And let's move on to our next page. And we're going to talk about back-to-back stem and leaf plots. This is a great way to compare data. We have Marty's and Bill's scores for 10 games of bowling listed below. Make a back-to-back stem and leaf plot. So here are Marty's scores and Bill's scores. And this is how I'm going to set this up. Now notice our scores are 3 digits, so I'm probably going to use 2 digits to represent the stems in this case. The stems are right here in the middle. And it looks like all of our scores are in the 120s up through the 160s. So if they go from 120s up to 160s, our stems are going to be listed as 12 for 120s, 13 for 130s, 14 for 140s, 15 for 150s, and 16 for 160s. Even if we don't have any scores in a particular range. For instance, we don't have any scores in the 150s, but we're still going to list 15 there. Okay? So what I've done now is list the leaves for Marty. Marty had scores of 121, so I put a 1 over here next to the 12. 123, so I put a 3 next to the 12, and 127, so I put a 7 next to the 12, and Bill had scores of 124, 128, and 129. So you notice they're going in opposite directions. They go from smallest to biggest, starting from the center. So Marty's actually go toward the left, Bill's go toward the right. The reason we do this is because we get a nice side-by-side comparison. And so we can see Marty's and Bill's scores in the 130s. We see Bill had one more score in the 130s than Marty did. He had one more score in the 140s than Marty did, but no one had a score in the 150s. But then you look down here, and here Marty really outshone Bill. He had 3 scores in the 160s, whereas Bill only had 1 score of 160. Okay? So that's another way to organize data, and we can compare it side by side. You notice we kept saying Marty had this, but Bill had that. That's a great way of organizing data. Notice also each of the stem and leaf plots we've talked about have titles. Put a title on that represents your data. For instance, Marty's and Bill's bowling scores. That describes what we're talking about here. Okay, so now let's move on to the next thing we're going to talk about, frequency tables. Frequency tables show how often each data value occurs, or in other words, the frequency. And here I have some information. The number of students enrolled in Western civilization classes at a university are given below. Make a frequency table. And so what I've done is I have actually grouped the number of students. It seems that it's got quite a range on it. It seems to go from, our lowest number appears to be 9 all the way up to our highest number, which appears to be 32. And that would be a real pain to write out 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so forth, and go all the way up to 32. So I've grouped these together. Notice I go from 1 to 10. Okay, so there are 10 possible values here. Same in my next group, 11 to 20. The width is 10. The width of these intervals has to be the same. They each have a width of 10. Okay, 21 to 30, 31 to 40. Okay, so I'm just going to find out how many students fell into each category, and we're just going to count them up. They're let's see, how many students, how many classes had a total of between 1 and 10 students? Well, just this 9. So that was 1. From 11 to 20, well, let's see. This 12 would fall into that. 18 would fall into that. 19 and 17. So we've got a total of 4 that fell in there. Now, if you want to put tally marks as you're counting up, that's fine. That also works. From 21 to 30, let's see. Well, here's one. 25 is another one. 28, 22, 27. We've got 5 of them. So that's where our 5 came from. And from 31 to 40, we've just got 31 and 32. So those are a total of 2 classes that fell into that category. Again, the title describes our data, enrollment in Western civilization classes, and we've just listed our category that we're looking at and the frequency, how many fell into each category. Okay, let's move on. Again, I've just made the note that each category has had the same span. In this case, each category covered 10 students. And what we're going to do is use that data to make a histogram. And we're using the same categories that we used in our frequency table. In fact, the easiest way to make a histogram is to make your frequency table first and then take your data. And you're making a type of bar graph, but the difference between regular bar graphs and a histogram is that the bars actually touch. Okay? So in our category of 1 to 10, which goes along the horizontal axis, we had 1 student. We had, for 11 to 20 students in a class, we had 4 classes like that. From 21 to 30, we had 5 students with that enrollment. And with an enrollment of 31 to 40, we had 2 classes. Now, one thing we do want to add here, we do want to list what these bars stand for. So this is our number of classes. So do fill that in with me. Okay. And this was the enrollment. How many students were in the class? Okay, we do want to make sure that our data is as understandable as possible, so we do need to label each axis. So the horizontal axis is enrollment, the vertical axis is number of classes. Again, notice that the bars must touch one another in a histogram. Now, a cumulative frequency table. Okay, This is a frequency table, but we're going to keep tallying up our frequency. Okay? Now, again, we're taking our data from enrollment and Western civilization classes. The first two columns are identical to what our other frequency table looked like. We had the number of students enrolled and the frequency. Now, what we're going to do is see a cumulative effect here. So, number of students enrolled from 1 to 10, if the enrollment was between 1 and 10, we had one class. So our cumulative frequency is 1. We're just going to keep that number. If our number enrolled was between 11 and 20, we had 4. So basically, what we're going to do is take the previous number and add it. So 1 plus 4 gives us 5. And actually, I should draw this arrow instead of doing it this way. I should go this way. This is what I'm trying to do with these arrows I've drawn in. 1 plus 4 gives me 5. Okay, so if you wanted to know what that really meant, you could say, oh, well, there were 5 classes that had enrollment between 1 and 20. Okay, so now let's go on to the next category. 5 students between 21 and 5 classes had between 21 and 30 students enrolled. So we're going to add our previous number of 5 to the current number of 5 in the 21 to 30 category, which gives us 10. So you can say we had 10 students that fell between, I'm sorry, 10 classes that fell between 1 and 30 in enrollment. Now, our very last category, we had 2 students there. So we're going to add 2 onto that 10 right here, and we get 12. So what we can say now is we had 12 classes total that had enrollment between 1 and 40 students. Okay, so I know that's probably a little bit different, but it does actually broaden the categories a little bit, because if somebody just gave you a frequency table and said, wait a minute, but I don't want to use these categories, I want to know how many students there, or how many classes there were that had enrollment between 1 and 20 students, we would go to the cumulative frequency, where the 20 is, and say, oh, that was 5 classes had enrollment between 1 and 20. All right. Well, thank you so very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.